Hi everyone. Well, I wanted to do a video on a book I came across today in the course of editing a manuscript which I mentioned in a previous video. And the name of the book is called The Communist Party in Post-Soviet Russia. It's a 2002 book written by Luke March, who is an academic at the University of Edinburgh. And what I found interesting is the book basically gets into the subject of how the Communist Party of Russia adapted and reacted to the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, and basically how they adapted and proved to be resilient in the post-Cold War period. And one of the things I found quite interested in reading parts of this book, he basically says that in this early part of the 90s, there was a debate within the Russian Communist Party on the direction the party should take, and obviously different factions and wings and ideologies emerged. One of the wings that emerged, March calls the Statist-patriotic wing, and basically what the idea was here with the Statist-patriotic wing of the Communist Party is they basically tried to revive and modernize the Communist Party of Russia by identifying it more closely with Russian tradition, Russian orthodoxy, Russian history, Russian people, and so forth, and really kind of tie the future of the party with these Russian traditions. And there was by no means unanimity among the Communist Party in Russia on these themes, but one of the reasons why it became so influential is because one of the people who were really a proponent of this line of thinking was a prominent figure. He remains prominent in Russia today, named Gennady Zyuganov. And Zyuganov was important. He's currently, I believe, the chairman of the Communist Party in Russia. But the reason why Zyuganov was so critical is because he actually ran for president of Russia and was seen in the run-up to the 1996 Russian elections as actually being a front runner, or being the front runner for a time. And then he ended up eventually losing to Boris Yeltsin after a great push, in part by the international community. And there are still a lot of people who believe that there was voter fraud and that Zyuganov might have won in a free election. But anyway, Zyuganov was very much a proponent of this statist, patriotic sort of brand of communism. Now, one of the legacies, or one of the lines of thinking that really, I think, became adopted by subsequent Russian leaders is that in creating this tie between different eras and periods in Russia, what they did to a certain degree is apologize for the Soviet period, not necessarily on the grounds of economics, but more due to the imperial side of the Soviet Union. And so the idea here is basically, I'm quoting now from Luke March, in describing this position of statist patriotic communism. He writes, quote, the USSR was geopolitical heir to the Russian Empire. And so, they're basically now kind of broadcasting, celebrating the idea, this tradition in Russia of a strong state, a Russia that is imperial, where Russians are kind of the first among equals of Russia's multicultural, multi-ethnic identity. And so the Communist Party basically, in this attempt to link itself to Russian traditions and culture, ties itself to an imperial tradition in Russia, which is obviously now causing a great deal of difficulty for the international community. I think, even though I don't think the Communist parties of Russia's resurgence is necessarily imminent, I think that one of the things that this sort of underscores is that I think that when Americans and American policymakers think of communism or the Communist Party or the way the Soviet Union um, really exemplified communism, we think in very ideological terms, and we think about economics, and we think of central planning and so forth. But I think that we, perhaps one of the ways that we can begin to contend with the challenge from Russia is really thinking about how this idea of statism in Russia, empire in Russia, has really won adherents across the political spectrum in Russia, and how when Russia takes on neo-imperial policies, these are seen as being a sort of continuity in Russia and Russian traditions and so forth. And I wonder if one of the ways that we can mitigate the threat from Russia is really by trying to empower or further or bolster narratives and help those in Russia who are furthering narratives that push back against this idea that there's something distinctly Russian about having a strong state, that there's something about Russia that justifies its imperial rule toward others, and really try to promote counter narratives that envision Russia in maybe a more free market, more limited government, and less imperial role in the world.